I don't know about you, but do you ever try to like impress somebody and it doesn't always, it goes south, the plan goes south, it doesn't always work the way you kind of planned it? I don't know if you've had an experience like that recently or not, but I certainly do from time to time. But it doesn't always work when we try to impress people, does it? Like, I think we have our father-in-law come over to our apartment, maybe like, it's not very often, maybe once a year, twice a year, and so my wife would kind of go all out, and she would, fix a huge meal for my father-in-law and mother-in-law, which is her mom and dad, and grandparents for our kids. But then afterwards, like, how, some people like coffee, and my father-in-law likes coffee, so she made this cup of coffee. It's like drip coffee, and, we try to get good coffee and stuff like that. So we serve the coffee, or she serves the coffee, and he drinks it, and this expression on his face, I can't quite describe it. It's like a form of shock, and so he asks in Korean, translated version, what is this? What on earth is this? He thought he was getting coffee. Adults like it kind of like, Korean adults anyway, I don't know about Americans, they like their coffee kind of 달달해, which means like, kind of sweet, okay? 달달해. So anyway, so he usually likes his coffee semi-sweet, so she put in, some sugar in there, or she thought it was sugar that she was putting in there, but it was actually salt, okay? So it was like half salt and half coffee, so it was in shock, right? And she's sitting in the back, so she's kind of embarrassed right now. But anyway, and then my dad comes over one time, and again, he comes over like once a year, twice a year, like that. And he likes coffee too, so same thing. We had a big meal. She fixed Jenny fixed a really nice meal, and then coffee was served. And would you believe it? Same thing happened again. Anyway, we try to impress people, and we try to be nice to them, serve them, and then all this, and it doesn't always work. I tried this with my wife too before when we were dating. I try to like impress her with like, I don't know, little things that you write, maybe little cards that you send, and flowers that you send, and, along with the flowers, I'll try to write, try to impress her, and by writing this little, corny lines of whether it's poetry, or I thought it was pretty cool and awesome. I tried my best, to impress her, so I would write, something like, roses are red and violets are blue, and Columbus found America, but I found you, on the count of 3, everybody go, oh, okay, 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah, that's the kind of effort, we try to make, but, and then she goes, oh, stop trying, that's silly, that's corny, and, after that, she said that the very next day, she had like 200 mosquito bites. So I said, told you, that's what happens if you call me my joke, corny and all what I'm trying to do, and anyway, that's a joke. But anyway, so we try to impress people a lot, but it doesn't always work, and there's a person in the Bible that I want to introduce to you today, who had virtually, everything. She's known as the Queen of Sheba. And she had virtually everything. If you look at some of the historical documents and historical accounts, she was known for her smarts, for her, wisdom. She was known for a lot of material goods that she had. She was known for her external appearance, her beauty. She was known for all of this. And actually, if you look it up, there's literally thousands of books that were written about the Queen of Sheba, and hundreds of movies even about this very same Queen of Sheba. And anyway, she's introduced in the book of Kings in the Old Testament, and she's introduced only one time. She appears, this Queen of Sheba appears only once in the entire Bible. But she's a very, well-known figure and character. And so I want to talk to you about this person a little bit in the time that remains. But, so she had virtually everything. You can imagine as a queen of a country, a nation, what would this person lack? Probably doesn't lack anything. I mean, she doesn't really need much, Sonny, mentioned this before. I don't know if you guys remember this, but maybe he told me, maybe it was a personal story shared with me once, but he said one time flying international, on those international flights, which, you guys probably do from time to time as well, those are long flights, right? Like from here to U.S. or to Australia or Canada or wherever. And so he was on this flight, and I guess something happened. Something was messed up. There were too many people on the flight that he was supposed to be on. And so what they ended up doing was, he was on this economy class, but they bumped him up to business or first class or something like that. And which is a nice deal, right? I mean, when you have to fly like 10, 12 hours and you're bumped up to to business or first class. I mean, the meals are different, the service is different, everything is different. But, he went on to say that the service and the meal and everything was so nice by the end of the trip. He said it's actually nicer than being at home, It's like nicer than sleeping on his own bed at home. And by the time the trip was almost over, nearly over, he said he didn't want to get off the plane. Most of us, when you fly, that many hours, like we're ready to go home, right? And but he said he felt like, staying longer, on the plane. But, what would you do? Imagine for a second, for people, for them, that's like the norm. They don't just get bumped up to business or first class, but that's just like whether they're businessmen or whatever. But, there wouldn't be too many things that would impress them, right? Because they're so used to the service, first class service, first class this, first class that. And what would impress a person like that, Maybe like for their birthday present or something like that, you might have to actually get them an airplane or something like that. I don't know. Or something outrageous like that, right? So the Queen of Sheba essentially had everything. If people wanted to send her a gift, you couldn't really impress her with too many things. But anyway, that person is introduced in 1 Kings 10, and if you look at the passage, maybe you have it in the bulletin if you picked one up on your way in, or maybe we have it on the screen. Or if you have your Bible with you, it's found in 1 Kings chapter 10. And I just want to read a portion of that to you. Beginning in verse 1, it says this: When the Queen of Sheba heard about the fame of Solomon and his relation to the name of the Lord, she came to test him with hard questions, with difficult and challenging questions, right? Arriving at Jerusalem with a very great caravan with camels carrying spices, large quantities of gold and precious stones, she came to Solomon and talked with him about all that she had on her mind. Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was too hard for the king to explain to her. When the Queen of Sheba saw all the wisdom of Solomon and the palace he had built, the food on his table, the seating of his officials, the attending servants in their robes, his cupbearers, and the burnt offerings he made at the temple of the Lord, she was overwhelmed. In other words, she was impressed, quite impressed, right? She said to the king, "The report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true. But I did not believe these things until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half was told me in wisdom and wealth. You have far exceeded the report I heard. How happy your men must be, how happy your officials who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. Praise be to the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and placed you on the throne of Israel. Because of the Lord's eternal love for Israel, he has made you king to maintain justice and righteousness." We'll stop there for now. But this person, Queen of Sheba, again, who had everything, virtually everything she needed, ever wanted. But one day she hears about this guy named Solomon, about his wisdom and everything that he had. And she decides to make a trip because she wanted to make sure. She was thinking inside, it can't be true. All that I heard, it sounds good, it sounds neat, but it just cannot be possible. So she decides to go on this trip, make this special trip to go visit him. And Solomon says, "Okay, come on over." So she makes the trip, and she, is able to see all this. with her very own eyes. And she's very impressed. She was overwhelmed. The passage said, right? He had made a mark, basically, essentially, on her life, right? He had made an impression on her life. And basically what I want to share with you this morning is that we can make a mark. We can leave an impression on people that we interact with, that we come in touch with, that we come in contact with. We can make a positive impact, and we can make a negative impact by the things that we say, by the things that we share, by our character, by the way we live, by the way we relate, by the choices that we make each and every day, 24/7. We make an impact. Whether we realize it or not, whether we like it or not, what we say, what we do, makes a difference. Can make a difference. And does make a difference in people's lives. Whether in the family, whether in school, or at the workplace, or at church, wherever it might be. Little things that we do can leave a lasting impression, can it? Even like random acts of kindness, right? It can touch somebody's heart. It can touch someone's soul. And it can make a difference in their lives. And I think God has called us, no matter how young we are, old we are, whether we're working, whether we're in school, God has called us to be difference makers like that, wherever we are, to make an impression in the name of God. And that's what Solomon did, right? By the way he led, by the way he related to the people that he was working with, by the way he related to his God that he worshiped and served. People were watching, and people were impressed. And the Queen of Sheba came all the way to Israel to watch this dude in action. And again, people are watching us all the time, and we can make an impact in their lives. Someone said, "You are the only Bible that some people will ever read." That's so true, isn't it? And as a result, what does Queen of Sheba do? She does something amazing. She does something startling. She praises God. Right? We read that in the passage earlier, with the reports that she's heard. And she ends up, she's probably someone that wasn't worshiping the same God that Solomon knew, the God of the Bible. But she was so impressed. She ends up praising God for all of that. As a direct result of the way we live, or maybe the wisdom that we embody, maybe the choices that we make, the way we relate to other people, people will choose to praise God. And then, if you look at verse 9, we read verse 9, up to verse 9, but it says, "Praise be to the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and placed you on the throne of Israel. Because of the Lord's eternal love for Israel, he has made you king to maintain justice and righteousness." I think people are given power. People are sometimes given wealth, material goods. People are given influence. People are given wisdom, maybe leadership. And all these things, at least according to this text, for justice and righteousness. In other words, to help those who are needy. Maybe those who are suffering. Maybe those who are forgotten around us, right? That's why God places us in positions of influence. And I think this is an incredible thing. Believe me, there are plenty of people on planet Earth, who feed themselves off ego trips. But that's not what this type of people do. When they become God-fearers, their agenda, their mission in life is not to impress other people about who I am or how great I am or what I can do and what I've achieved all this time. But their agenda and their mission in life is to honor God. And through that life, their prayer and their hope and their wishes are that people around me would come to know God as a direct result of the way I live. And so my prayer for you is that you would make those choices that are God-honoring, that reflect the image of God, so that people will notice you. They'll take notice and they become interested in the God that you claim to know, the God that we claim to believe. Because people will start, when they see that, not just hear what we say, but when they begin to see the God that lives within us, they'll become interested. They'll become impressed. And they'll want to know the very God that we serve and worship. Last week, I think Sonny talked about Emmanuel, and Larry mentioned about his family a little bit ago too, but they have 3 girls, right? And some of you weren't here last Sunday, so this is kind of a repeat. But basically, Emmanuel's family came from Pakistan, and he was a lawyer in Pakistan. But because there was so much persecution in that land, if you're a believer, if you're a Christ follower, just working there, living there became increasingly challenging. So they decided to come out to Korea, and he came first, and 8 months later, his wife and 3 daughters came. And the second daughter, I think who's 6 or 7 years old, can't hear. She's deaf. So the family found out that there's a way that she can have an operation here in Korea. It's costly, but that it is possible to regain her hearing. And so I think last week Sonny made the announcement, and several people gave. And it doesn't matter how much we give, and it's not just about helping Emmanuel and his family or their daughter, but when we show these acts of kindness and mercy, people will notice. Not so much notice us, but notice God that moves us, that ticks us, that makes us who we are. Let's pray together, shall we? In this time, I'd like to invite you to just for all of us to maybe say a quick, short prayer, and maybe something like, God, I want to be a person of influence. I want to leave an impression on people's lives with the things that you have provided me, gifts, talents, knowledge, skills, all of that. God, I pray that I would be able to use them in such a way that people will notice who I serve and who I know and who I worship. So, if you would you make